and the Planning Commission meeting of March 12th. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
I sure will. Okay, Jeff Newsom is absent. Here. Joe Kalani. Here. Okay. Sue Grissom is absent. Mike Mitchell. Here. And Tom Murphy. And Mr. Fox.
I am here. Thank you. Next up, item 4, approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved. Support.
A motion to approve from Commissioner Kalani, second from Commissioner Mitchell. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We have no meeting minutes this evening, so we'll skip item 5. Call of the public. Anyone wish to speak this evening? Okay, we'll close item 6. We'll move to item 7, which is a public hearing, which we do not have, and go to item 8A, which is site plan application number 527. This is the KFC revised site plan with a special land use. And I guess what I'd like to do is invite the applicants up. We'll turn it over to our planning director for a couple comments, and then back to you, and then we'll have a conversation. All right? Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the KFC drive-through is proposed on the north side of M59, not too far from here, just a little bit east of Clark Road, next door to the Hartland Point Plaza multi-tenant retail commercial developments, as you can see up here, just to the west of that development. So that's the commercial plaza with Big B Coffee and Little Caesars and those uses. The KFC site plan has been before this Planning Commission before. On January 29th, the applicant came before the Planning Commission for a public hearing for the special land use. A drive-through fast food use is considered special land use in the GC General Commercial Zoning District. So the first step the applicant had to go through was having a public hearing for that special land use before this Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission opted to forward the special land use application to the Township Board because only the Township Board can approve a special land use. The Township Board approved that special land use on February 12th on the condition that the site plan come back before this Planning Commission for final approval. Based on the conversation the applicant had with the Planning Commission on January 29th, there was some work to do with the building elevations and with the landscaping and some other items. The applicant has revised the site plan that the Planning Commission saw back in January to address a lot of the issues that came up in the Planning Department's review letter and also in the comments of the Planning Commission. And those revised plans have been reviewed by the Planning Department in our review letter dated March 3rd, 2015, which you should have in your packets. I'd like to think a pretty thorough review letter, and I think the applicant, as we mentioned in our letter, did a commendable job updating their plans in order to address the comments of the Planning Department and the Planning Commission. And some revisions to the landscaping plan and also to the building elevations. It's worth noting that the building elevations that are on the screen right now and that you have in your packets have since been revised, and I think Mr. Beckett and Mr. Flewelling could speak to this a little bit. The KFC corporate office made some tweaks, and I think for the better. You'll notice that what they call the flag on both the front and on the east side of the building no longer has the red metal panels. It's now entirely a brick element, and at least to my eye, that's an attractive change. So since we got this change, midweek, Mr. Beckett, we printed those changes out, and you have those in paper form in front of you tonight. So I just wanted to point out that the elevation renderings that were included in the packet that went out last Thursday have been tweaked since. I'm happy to go through our letter point by point and hit on some of the highlights, or if the Planning Commission wants to have the applicant give their overview as well. In general, the Planning Department is recommending the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval for the KFC, conditional on a few items. But in general, we feel that the building elevations are a positive change, and the landscaping has been enhanced to better screen the use from the residential development behind it, that being Heritage Meadows. And we feel this is a positive revision. We know there's some comments that Sue Grissom provided for me with respect to the landscaping. We can get into those a little bit, and I know Chair Fox and I had some discussions about some things that he wanted to bring up, and all of those things I think are manageable changes that could perhaps be addressed in a revised stamping set that staff could confirm that those changes, that some of those smaller changes are made. So with that, I can answer any specific questions you have. I can go into more detail. We can turn it over to the applicant. I leave it to the...
Why don't we let the applicant make some comments that you'd like, and then what we'll do is we'll run through your letter point by point and real quickly and allow the commission to ask any questions. But is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, I apologize for the late change to the building elevations. We've been working with corporate for some time, and finally did hear back from them this week. So the change that they did allow, or require us to make, actually eliminates the red metal panels on those two elevations, the front and the east elevation, and really the brick flag area is really a little softer tone and less contrast to the KFC sign. So I was surprised at that, but pleased with that just the same. With regards to the sample percentages, we do exceed all your requirements. The front elevation, we have 62% brick versus 40% required. Let's try that. This is the red brick. We actually have a sample of that here. If you'd like, I can show that to you real quick. There's also, Glenn, can you grab that? So the first brick we have here is the brick on the flag elements for the side, the front, and then also at the drive-through window. The next brick is, in the original building design, these were white columns and horizontal features. All that's been changed from ephes to brick, and that's a tan color. And that works very well with the red brick. And then the back of the building and the wainscot around the building are all the darker brown brick. Definitely softened it up. But again, the brick percentages are very high percentage versus your 40% required. On the drive-through side, we're 75% brick.
Pretty much all brick, huh?
The main entry side, 64% brick. The rear, 83% brick. So the other materials are lesser percentages, and all comply with your ordinance. We do have awning elements. Back in this area, we have a brown metal panel. And it's pre-finished bronze color. The patio railings will be similar color to that. So I think we've come quite a ways with building elevations. With regards to the site plan, we haven't really made too many changes to that. We've certainly enhanced the landscaping and made those adjustments. We added a berm at the back to help screen the residences behind. We've added the plantings to the detention pond, and then you can see this is a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs, a lot of plantings. We are still working with MDOT, and we'll continue to go through their review process, and should have those permits fairly soon. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right. Typically, what we do is run through the review letter Quickly, a lot of the points are real brief, so if the Planning Commission wants to grab their letter from March 3rd from the staff, we'll run through it real quick, and any points that come up that you have questions or comments on, just speak up at that time. But if we take a look at the staff letter, really we get into it at the bottom of page 2, where we get into dimensional requirements. Everything meets and complies. Frontage complies, building setbacks far in excess of what the minimum requirements are.
Yeah, just one quick
Yep.
question on the
Absolutely.
setbacks. The front setback under the proposed now says 80 foot. Did you move the building back?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We moved the building.
I noticed previously it was like 60.
It was 68 feet
Yeah.
prior to that.
Very good.
Okay. Any comments on building height within the required maximum height, not exceeding it? Lot coverage, certainly under with all the property you have there, a lot of natural space. Under site requirements, dumpster enclosure, this is one of the areas that I had a conversation with Dave about today, and we just spoke before the meeting. The dumpster enclosure is proposed to be split-face block painted, which would not fulfill the requirements of the ordinance. 2, we don't paint block for maintenance purposes. 2, the dumpster enclosure is meant to complement the building itself, and we don't have split face on the building. So what we need you to do is change the enclosure around the material surfacing the enclosure to materials matching the building. So whatever materials you have in the building.
Sure. We talked briefly about that a few minutes ago. We can still use a block enclosure, and we can add the dark brown
That would be fine?
brick to it. And
Sure.
we don't want to draw a lot of attention to that, but there is landscaping around that as well.
Right, right. So that would be the comment I had on the dumpster enclosure. Off-street parking, any questions or comments about that? Would appear to meet the ordinance. Barrier-free parking, looks like you want 2 instead of 1. That's,
Well, it's 1 for 25 spaces under the code.
Yep.
So, we do have 36
Okay.
normal spaces and two handicaps.
right, so you're good. Any questions or comments on parking lot, driveway, internal road setbacks? Looks like they meet all of them or exceed them. Drive-through stacking. Question I had, and Dave, I'm fine with it. I noticed there's a letter in here from Team Kentucky Fried, or Team KFC, in our packet. It looks like you're well exceeding what it is that you believe you need with the 9 to 10.
I guess rather than ask for a variation or variance to the ordinance, we just went ahead and designed for the 10 spaces. We don't think it'll be necessary, but if it is, we'll welcome that.
Well, if it's really good food and service. You're hoping you use them all. Loading spaces, looks as though they meet. Then this access management, can you just briefly touch on that again with the whole MDOT thing and driveway spacings?
I don't recall the exact spacing. I think it's 460 feet between driveways. With all the wetlands in this area, east and west of this site, we have a pretty small window where we can actually get this driveway in an appropriate location and still provide some space to the west for the next parcel's driveway. So MDOT has reviewed the location for that, and that's approved. We're going through the engineering right now with the bike path and the grading and materials for the work in the right-of-way. As far as other access, we are proposing access, a stub for future access easement to the parcel to the west. And eventually, I would think that as this parcel develops and ties to the next parcel west, we'll have access out to Clark Road. So that stub would be installed with the development. It would simply have to be opened up and met basically at the property line with the adjacent
Yeah, and
parcel.
your driveway, I mean, you're putting a right turn lane in from the access point of the neighboring commercial development.
Yes. This is
Essentially, they're basically extending the one that's already there for Hartland Point Plaza.
So
it's a substantial
it's a
improvement.
substantial right turn lane.
Yes, it is. It takes a lot of buckets.
Well, and I think MDOT's going to make the next guy extend from ours all the way to Clark Road. I'm sure of it, because
Yeah.
it's a gas station.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's nice not to have the hiccups, the in and outs of the right turn lanes. That's probably what they're looking
It's going to
at.
be just an additional lane all the way down 59.
Right. So, okay. Any questions on that or thoughts? Okay. Page 5, landscaping. This greenbelt landscaping, are you referring to the landscaping on the right of the driveway area? Is that what you're referring to, that MDOT needs to approve?
The MDOT needs to approve the safety path,
Yeah.
and then any trees or shrubs that are actually planted within the right-of-way. There is a wetlands area in here, and that's why the safety path has been designed to come back down and intersect the existing path.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before we get too far into landscaping, so Planning Commissioner Grissom is out of the country, actually, and wasn't able to join us, but she did send some comments, and one of the comments that she asked was more of a question, and I asking on her behalf. She asked about the 30-foot driveway onto M59, given that the minimum driveway spacing in the township is 24 feet, and she asked, does it need to be wider? And I think there's two ways to answer that. One is, at least within MDOT's right-of-way, it's their call how wide the driveway needs to be. And so they're showing 30 feet within that right-of-way. It makes sense to me that it would need to be wider when you consider that folks are coming in off a 55-mile-an-hour state highway. You would want that wider driveway than what you may otherwise require along a 30, 35-mile-an-hour road. Now, the township, once we get inside or outside of the right-of-way, then we would have jurisdiction to possibly go with a 24-foot driveway, but I don't know that for this small stretch in here, where it remains 30 feet, I don't know that it would necessarily make sense to squeeze the driveway for that relatively short distance.
I would agree.
Especially you're trying to get that radius in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
The driveway back in this area, we did reduce to 30 feet. But in this area here, with future cross-access and a lot of turning movements, as well as truck, RV, campers, service vehicles, I really don't want to choke them off that fast coming off a 55-mile-an-hour roadway.
Okay. Item under landscaping B, foundation planning. Dave, you're making the comment, Planning Commission may modify the standards if it determined in keeping within the intent of the ordinance. Under foundation landscaping.
Correct. So let me get to the landscaping plan. The foundation landscaping per the ordinance is to be minimum 8 feet wide, but the Planning Commission does have the discretion to reduce that, particularly in instances when the landscaping is adjacent to a pedestrian access, which is what we, for the most part, have here. So their landscape beds are not always 8 feet wide. They range from 4 to 6 feet, and we would be looking for the Planning Commission, if they agree with staff, to allow a narrower landscape bed, given the the design of the site and the provision of sidewalks, and just a general consensus that it's meeting the intent around the building perimeter. Obviously, you're not going to get landscape beds on the west side of the building because that's your drive-through service area.
What did Commissioner Grissom,
Questions
did she have?
Actually, she concurred and went so far as to say, should we even look at that 8-foot standard, given that we've come up against this before, and the Planning Commission has consistently made a call on this one to allow a narrower foundation landscape bed, and her question was, should we look at revising the ordinance to not require 8 feet, since more often than not we're shrinking it with good reason.
Well, and I think when you take a good-looking building, you can take a look at the landscaping around it maybe and work with a 4 to 6 foot space, personally. As long as the space is big enough with the plant selections that in 3 years are not growing over into the sidewalk. So, but we'll leave that to the landscape people to do plant selections. So everybody okay?
I think it's
I'm
certainly...
okay with that.
I think it's certainly meeting the intent, so
Okay.
I'm content with that.
All right. Parking lot landscaping, it would appear as though they're meeting the requirements along with the perimeter landscaping and the detention pond.
So here's where I jump in and I play Sue.
That's why I stopped.
Yep, thank you. So I remember we had similar conversations to this with KFC, and that was that if there's opportunities to reduce the amount of mulch and trade it for additional sod, then that's what she'd be looking for. There are some areas, for instance, through here, where it's a lot of mulch and not a lot of plantings, and if there's not plantings, then maybe the mulch doesn't need to be there, and instead you'd curve the edging in and get a little more sod in through there.
What's the elevation there? Is it just a drop?
Through here?
That where you were just pointing right there? Yeah.
I don't know that that's an elevation drop. So that's behind the dumpster.
It's just showing the boundary of the plant bed.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So
It is substantial mulch in those areas. We can certainly tighten up the beds, but not so much that in 2 or 3 or 4 years that the growth overtakes the size of the bed.
I think she was also noticing around the trees that, could you bring in the mulch beds a little bit in the trees? Otherwise, you're going to have a pretty substantial area under the trees of a lot of mulch and not a lot of shrubs underneath it. So I think it's something that the applicant could take one more look at and trim off some mulch and a few more square feet of sod.
We are working with the landscape architect on this, so we just saw these comments this afternoon, and we'll be happy to address them as able.
I'd be comfortable putting that in the program of when you send in your final set of drawings.
Yeah.
And then, I can't remember if we got to the detention pond yet.
We're there.
Sue noticed that some of these plantings are in the base of the detention pond, and the question is, are they going to, if the detention pond is functioning as it should and there's standing water there more often than not, is that a healthy growing spot for some of these plantings in through here?
So maybe we could just relocate or reevaluate the location of plants around the
Yeah, we'll make sure that if whatever plants are in the pond area would be suitable for that, but certainly we can make those adjustments.
Okay. Anybody else have comments on the detention basin? Screening of residential districts. We talked about it. We were kind of working with all the natural trees and vegetation we had there, and then you went ahead and added that berm to the back of the parking lot. Did I hear there's a notation needs to be made on the print as far as the actual grade?
Yeah, the slope is, so we do we require a 1 to 4 slope. They're showing 1 to 3, and we show more of a crest at the top of the berm, a 4-foot crest. And I can say that landscape companies would probably agree with our requirements there, that if they got to get a mower up and down that berm, they don't want it to get too steep, and they don't want too much of a pointed crest, or otherwise they're going to be scalping the top of the berm with the mower all the time.
So just, you're going to modify the plans?
We'd agree to that.
Okay. General site landscaping. Says, meets the requirement, yes, subject to the comments below. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine the general site and foundation landscaping requirements are satisfied.
So I think what I heard was with the exception of some tweaks based on Sue Grissom's comments. I think I'm hearing general consensus.
I think it looks well landscaped.
Yes.
Understanding that the size of those trees are not the actual size when they're planted. We'll have to wait a few years for that.
Yeah.
Sidewalks and pathways in the middle of the page there, it looks like it meets the requirement, with a note here on the right turn lane of the KFC, and you're working with them on it.
There is an existing pathway on the other side of this black line, and regardless of how it shakes out with MDOT, with the addition of the turn lane, we just want to know that there is going to be a pathway connection, that we're not going to have some sort of a pathway offset for, because we weren't getting ourselves out in front of it. So we just want to be sure that we're all working together with MDOT to make sure that at the end of the day we have a...
We just don't know how squiggly it's going to look.
All right.
We want it to connect. We don't want an 8-foot offset on the path alignment. And so another Sue Grissom comment is showing cross-hatching for the crosswalk here, but not here. I think for the sake of consistency, if we could do the cross-hatching, probably more appropriately at the main drive there.
Yeah, through the safety path area?
Yes.
Is that just a paint stripe?
Yes.
It would
we're
just be
talking?
paint stripe.
It's not the ADA stuff.
Well, that's not out of the law. I think they probably have to have that, that metal stamped pad at where it meets
They
the
will.
driveway.
The detectable warning systems.
The
Yes.
ADA requirement.
The detectable warning systems actually are really only required at street intersections.
So you do not have to do it here.
Well, no, but
We do it
typically
in
what
parking
we
lots
do,
at stores.
we always add the symbol to our plans anyway to make sure that the contractor knows that that's supposed to be a barrier-free path of travel.
Okay.
So there are design standards he has to comply with and details in the plans, but under the code,
It depends on the amount of traffic, and because some commercial driveways, they do require them, and when I say they, I mean MDOT in this case. If it's a Walmart driveway, the answer is one. If it's a office building driveway, the answer is different, is always been my understanding.
anyway, yes, well,
If it needs to be there, it will be.
If Walmart, they would have it, I think. I don't think we should have a lot less customers than Walmart.
All right, lighting. Intensity of lighting looks like it meets. Fixture height looks like it meets, with a note below. Are we looking for some color of fixtures to be placed on the plan?
Yeah, that would be helpful. I don't think any of us are looking for a bright red light fixture.
Yeah, I think it's actually required, so do you know what you're doing?
white stripe, white fixture.
No white light poles with red stripes.
It should be bronze, it'll be pretty close to.
So if we could get it added to the print that you submit. We also have all the fixtures on the building are downward directed and shielded, right?
Yes.
Okay. So water supply and disposal, there's a DPW letter in here.
They've got to buy some water and sewer.
Yep. I guess you'll have to. Won't have to worry about the stacking spaces if we don't. Walls and fences. Planning Commission should determine if the fencing associated with the outdoor seating area and its color is acceptable. You said it was going to be the dark brown bronze finish. If we could,
Yes.
if we could get that added to the print too, the notation of the color.
Okay.
And then you also have a note here, Dave, about screening and walls at the back of the site. We kind of talked about it when we did the drive-through, correct? And
Early on, we talked about a combination of landscaping, walls, berms, preservation of existing landscaping, and I think what the applicant is proposing is, given the distance between the drive-through operation and the backyards of the folks that live in Heritage Meadows, given the existing vegetation that's going to remain, given the landscaped berm that they're proposing, they're suggesting that that's sufficient to screen the neighboring residential from the lights and the noise and the traffic of this kind of use. It's worth noting, too, we brought it up last time, that their drive-through speaker, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's facing due west. It's not as if it's in the back of the site and directing sound toward those houses. And you'll note on the lighting plan that the light levels drop off not far off of the back of their parking lot and would be well at zero by the time they get to folks' backyards. So it would be up to the planning commission if the screening of the use is sufficient. The recommendation of staff is that it is.
Thoughts?
No, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
It's fine. Okay. Just around architecture and building materials. You highlighted those earlier, certainly exceeding the requirements of the look of brick. Can you explain to the group, because we had that meeting, what this brick really is?
Okay.
And how you're going to install it?
The KFC corporate specified brick is a Glengarry brick, and it's a thin brick. It's the same materials, but it's about a half-inch thick. And the installation method is a patented system where they install a metal panel on the wall. That panel has little barbs on it that actually hold the brick in place and hold all the coursing level and square. The brick is adhered with construction adhesive applied vertically, and between the adhesive and the barbs, it's held in place until it is mortared. And with this metal panel system, there is space around the barbs that hold the brick for the mortar to actually go in and get behind the brick as well. It's not a solid material behind the brick, but the metal panel system does solve a lot of the problems thin brick has had over the years, and that this provides for moisture relief. There's a drainage pattern, just like with an EIFS, an exterior insulation finish system. There's a path of travel for any moisture that gets in there. So a lot of the problems with thin brick have come from moisture getting in the wall, not being able to escape, and then with freeze and thaw cycles, it pops the brick. With this system, that doesn't happen. It's got a 50-year manufacturer warranty with this system.
This is probably not the system they used at Walmart. I'm not sure what they used, but it didn't work.
Yes, they did. Well, that was going to be some of the questions I was probably going to have for you. I've already asked them, but I'll ask them for the group. The system you're proposing does work in a northern climate.
Yes,
Correct.
I think that probably drove Glengarry to actually develop this system because of some of the early problems, and it does address the freeze-thaw cycles that we have here in Michigan.
Do they actually make a corner brick then? So when you're coming to the corners, it looks like the real thickness of a brick?
You know, I believe, yes, they do have corner, actually, I saw this in Toledo. Yes, there are corners.
Yeah. And the issue we had with the other facility in town, that was stacked stone, but as we found, it was a product and the application was installed according to standards for southern climates, and it didn't do well here, and since has been ripped off and redone for a northern climate.
The stone applications, you know, were so popular in the early days that, you know, there was a cost-effective method to have your house look like real stone, even though it wasn't. The systems work great in California and the south part of the United States, but there was a huge failure with a lot of the fast food chains using that product early on, and a lot of those stores have since replaced that.
Do they have any questions for him on this product?
Is this panel a mesh or is it a solid material?
It's a solid panel with some that's been stamped with the drainage patterns and
Okay, what's it made out of?
it's a galvanized metal, and it's got a light color reflective paint to it as well.
Mr. Beckett, can you move your microphone a little bit closer? We're going to have to type
How
up
long has
these
that
minutes.
product been around in use?
You have it on one of your...
Of course, it sounds like it's fairly new in the northern side. I'm just curious, I'm worried about it rusting behind there and
It's,
showing through the mortar and crumbling.
When they develop their system,
I think the idea is good.
10 years maybe?
Well, it is a 50-year warranty, I think you said, but is it that the brick will stay on? What's it going to look like? You know, is it going to rust through the mortar in spots? I don't, that's...
we would hope not. I guess what we'd like you to...
Rust through the concrete?
Well, sometimes you see rust coming through the mortar from different, but I'm kind of comfortable with it. I'm curious to see how it works, but I'm just, make sure we do our homework.
I'll offer you this. I've talked with a couple of contractors that are telling us that they can install full-face brick less expensively than this brick system. The metal panels are fairly expensive. We have yet to do one here in Michigan, and we'd like to put it out to bid and see how these bids come in. This is KFC's national spec. This is what they're expecting us to do, but I'm sure they'd be just as happy if we use the same brick as full-face brick. We just need to... There's a lot of the site development costs on this project, a 350-foot turn lane, the right-of-way work, the brick on the building. We need to make sure the project's economically viable as well.
Got chairs in the lobby, you know? Lawn chairs.
Well, we understand.
So I guess if you would entertain this, we'd like the thin brick system approved, if you can do that. And then, based on the bids, we'll kind of determine what would get installed.
I think his question is coming. We've declined the opportunity for this product years ago. I think I told you that in the meeting, and I think the fear was that most of us at the time were familiar with facilities that had used a product like this and had pieces of brick that had fallen off. But I also think that the construction method and the installation methods are different than they were 8-10 years ago when it was last reviewed here. Right, yeah.
I don't think they're going to come out and fix it.
No, I think that's why you're getting, he's been around and he was around with the other opportunities we had for it. But we've also seen the cultured stone, the stack stone, all those types of looks, and those are durable now. So they've found a way to get that installed.
We asked you to get rid of the ephes and you came forward with brick, so I mean, we're kind of excited with that, so I don't want to deter it, but I'm just trying to get a better understanding, that's all.
Well, I think what the ordinance was intended to call for was the full brick. I don't think we have this particular item in mind, but I think we have the ability to work with it. And I think the installation was, and the longevity of it was what I said probably would come up in the meeting. And as Keith is one of the more senior members here, he remembers it. Okay. Any comments from Joe or...
It seems like if the panel is galvanized, the opportunity of rusting would be extremely rare.
Right. So you're saying you would like us to approve it with the thin brick, and if your bids come in out of line and you decide to go to a full-face brick, you want the opportunity to switch back to the traditional method?
Correct.
Right.
Can we work with that, Dave? Is that just by notation, or?
As long as we all understand that if we were to go to the full-face brick, that it's not going to be a dramatic change in the elevations aesthetically from what we're already seeing.
What I want is the approval, and then I want the contractors to tell me what they really want to do and what those prices are. And if they're the same price or close, obviously I'm going with full brick. If there's a huge discrepancy or a huge issue, then we do the thin brick. But as it turns out, after we've talked to the the people that are bidding this job, they're thinking, price-wise, they're going to be very close. If they're very close, none of this really matters then. But if it's a huge discrepancy, then I want to go with what all the other KFCs did throughout the country in the north, like in Saginaw and Bay City. They did thin brick last year. The buildings look great. The Cadillac was built 2 years ago. He did thin brick. It looks great. But I didn't know the price was going to be almost the same. Now, if the price is almost the same, there's no reason to even screw with the thin brick and just go straight up. But, we won't know that until we get your approvals, we get the bids out.
Right, and you're saying the thin brick is available in a full brick?
Yes.
Those three, so we're looking at no product change
Same
from
Same
appearance.
colors, everything, right?
Yeah,
So
same
we can deal with that, Dave?
No, I suppose if the bids come back and full brick is more economically feasible, then it's a minor change that the applicant and I can work out administratively. It's not going to hold them up. It's not as if they would have to, unless you request it, they wouldn't have to come back here.
I think if a building stays looking the same once it's up, you don't know what it is.
It's not going to look any different.
So
Right.
I would make one comment, though. There will be a slight impact to the site plan because our brick, if we do full-face brick, we'll have a 5-inch brick ledge all the way around the building. So our setbacks, side yard setbacks would vary 5 inches.
I think you're exceeding, so...
I just,
Yeah, but I'm glad,
disclosure.
we like that. We like that, okay. So are we okay with that method of installation in the program as proposed? Absolutely. Okay, very good. I had a couple quick notes, just things to get on the plans, just like you're putting the colors of the light fixtures and other things. We need to get I'll use the word aluminum around the windows, whatever the trim around the windows is, whatever color that is. If that's silver, if it's the bronze color, is it fire engine red?
It's a mill finish,
Okay.
mill finish.
I didn't see it on the print, but if you could just add it to the print, what the, under your exterior finishes chart, that would be great.
Okay.
Neon green.
Yeah, well, that's why we ask.
What happened?
Exactly. Same with all your drive-through menu boards and all that type of thing.
They're that color.
Okay. Just add it to the plan, that would be great.
I think they're that color.
And it may be corrected in your latest submittal, but the submittal that was for our packet on page A0.1-1, which was the exterior finishes chart, item 5 is not on there. It's a blank.
Look in the lower right-hand corner, it's down.
Well, there's a whole chart on the left-hand page.
Yes.
Right
Notice
there.
that also here.
Yeah. See, item 5
4 to
is blank.
6.
Went from 4 to 6.
And then,
But if you look,
I hope that on the revised one,
Okay, if it's corrected on the revised plan that you received midweek, we're good. It wasn't on the packet we received.
it makes a reference on the bottom of that page here, but it doesn't.
Okay, if that's the new submittal, we're probably good then.
There it is.
Okay. Signage? That's administratively approved. Next page, item 9, outdoor seating and dining. Do you know what the furniture is made of? Have you picked it yet?
The exterior furniture?
Yeah. The patio furniture?
I don't know what it's called, the same stuff we got at,
is it movable or is it?
it's like a black metal,
Okay.
but it's got rubber over it, so it never
Yeah.
gets messed up,
Okay.
and they last forever. They're real expensive. I've got it in Howell on our patio, and in Waterford on our patio.
We just don't do plastic stuff in that, so it's blowing in a windstorm down to Sherwin-Williams.
It's like a steel table, and it's got like a soft rubber on it or something,
Uh-huh.
so it's real easy to wash, clean, and
Okay. DPW review, so we already used, we've already acknowledged that. Township engineers review, acknowledges in general water supply, sanitary, and paving requirements, storm drainage. And then you need a detention basin maintenance agreement, too?
Do you have standard,
We have a template,
Draft
don't we?
for that?
That we could provide to them?
HRC does. If you remind me, I'll get it to you.
See the super lockbox on the plan, so the fire marshal's happy?
and the ladder bracket on the rear elevation?
Right. And just your correspondence with MDOT, you guys are still working on things. Anybody have any other questions for him or comments? Come a long way from the first submittal. Thank you very much.
Ready.
You're ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
60 degrees, bro. Start digging a hole.
If you are so inclined, there is a recommended motion on page 10.
I move to approve site plan application number 527 for a KFC fast food drive-through restaurant located on M59 east of Clark Road, conditioned on the following: inclusion of access easement to accommodate future development to the west, agreement with outdoor seating operating restrictions, inclusion of specifications for facade lighting, compliance with all the requirements of the fire marshal, DPW director, and township engineer. And I guess the other changes we made tonight also are the dumpster and landscaping.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to approve site plan application number 527 for KFC fast food restaurant and drive-through from Commissioner Voigt, second from Commissioner Mitchell. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you. Now you can have a restaurant close to home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up would be item 8B, and this would be site plan application number 528, the revised Wood Edge preliminary site condominium. Well, good evening. How are you? Good. If we get you your name and company you're with. All right, thank you. David Campbell, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So this is another site plan, in this case a preliminary site condominium plan that the Planning Commission has seen once before, and on the same date the first time that the Planning Commission saw the KFC plan. So these two projects are kind of sort of on the same schedule. This would be a 21-unit, single-family site condominium on the south side of Maxfield Road, on the south end of Maxfield Lake. You can see the aerial up on the screen showing the subject property. The subject property right now is divided into 3 tax parcels, and this has to do with an old plat that would need to get we need to do a combination of these 3 properties as a condition of approval for this. But it's this area here. It's about 21 acres, and they're proposing 21 units on those 21 acres. When this application came before the Planning Commission back in January, it was received relatively favorably. There were some issues that the Planning Commission wanted the applicant to take an opportunity to reevaluate and come back with a revised plan. That's what the applicant did. One of the big points of discussion was preservation of natural features, and in that same realm, using the existing natural features in lieu of new landscaping. So this is primarily a wooded lot, and what the applicant was looking to avoid is having to put in a bunch of new landscaping, and in the process have to take out some of the existing mature vegetation in order to make space for that new landscaping. So what the applicant has formally submitted is a request to this Planning Commission to waive some of the landscaping requirements, and particularly around the perimeter perimeter of the site and along the site's frontage, and give the applicant credit for the existing vegetation to remain. Now, in having that conversation with the applicants, some questions came up of how do we get to that point, and what the applicant has done is provided a detailed tree inventory around the entire perimeter. They did a tree inventory around the 25 feet in around the entire perimeter, and noted the quantity, the quality, the size, and the species of the trees within that area, so that the Planning Commission, when they're considering this request from the applicants, whether or not to waive some of the significant landscaping requirements, they would know what they're waiving them in lieu of. The idea would be that the existing vegetation to remain is as good or better at satisfying the intent of the township's landscaping standards than would be wiping all that vegetation out and coming in with new landscaping. So that's, I'd say, the most significant change of the plan between when this Planning Commission saw it in January and when we're seeing it this evening. Procedurally, what would need to happen is, if the Planning Commission did want to move this project along, they would be making a recommendation for preliminary site condominium approval to the Township Board, and then the Township Board would have the option of approving the preliminary site condominium, and then we would be back with final site condominium, which at that point is more focused on the master deed and the bylaws and some of the legalities of the project. Planning Commission would, again, make a recommendation on the final, and then the final would go back to the Township Board. Another point worth mentioning on this project is Lone Tree Road on the south side of the property. So this, in this view, the property's turned, so it would help me if I rotate it here real quick. But Lone Tree Road, as we've discussed, is as far as the Road Commission is concerned, is a private road that's not in their jurisdiction. And there's, to my knowledge, not a whole lot of legal access agreements or private road maintenance agreements, anything like that, to provide some legal access for the residents whose only point of access to Maxfield Road is via Lone Tree. Now, with this plan, this actually eliminates some of that confusion, at least along this portion of the property, this 800 and something feet along the south side of this proposed development. The applicant is proposing a 33-foot access easement across the entirety of the property, so at least on that stretch, there would be legal access for Lone Tree Road, and that's a positive change. I know a number of the residents along Lone Tree had some concern that the development of this property would sever their access and they would be landlocked, but I think it's to the contrary. I think this is actually an opportunity to clean up some of that. So we can go into the details of the site plan, the details of the Planning Department's review. That review is dated March 4th, 2015. The Planning Commission will note that the recommendation of the Planning Department is for the Planning Commission to forward this on to the Township Board with a recommendation of approval for the preliminary site plan. I know Mr. LeClaire is here to represent the applicant, and I'm sure either one of us could answer any questions you're going to have.
Okay. Would you like to add anything?
No, not really much to add. As David said, we're back here this evening just cleaning up some things that the Planning Commission asked for at our January meeting, and we feel that we've done that, and with Dave's help and cooperation, and feel like we're ready to move this project forward.
Okay. Let's take a look at the Planning Department's letter of March 4th, and we can probably start on about, Dave's already, page 3, I guess, proposed general concept. You have sewer, water, but not, or sewer, but not water, so it's all private wells. Density was already discussed at 21 lots on 21 acres, the minimum of 25% open space with a minimum 10% total open space being usable. Dave is asking us for a determination on whether the areas meet the criteria where the land is suitable for recreation. Can you define what those areas that you're asking us to review?
Sure. So the applicant has provided a breakdown of the total open space, which is 5.5 acres, or 26% of the gross. And with 3.25 of those acres, or 15%, 16, I suppose, percent of the gross, consisting of upland, which they would say is their usable open space, therefore meeting the criteria of the zoning ordinance. The suggestion that the Planning Department had, and I presume the applicant's representative is going to have some thoughts on this, is since a good portion of the usable open space is along this west perimeter, and lots 10 and 11, the back corners come right up to the overall property line, our thought was it would be easier to say that this is usable open space if there was a relatively narrow connection between these two open space areas. If these two back corners of lots 10 and 11 could be pulled back a reasonable number of feet, just so that there is a connection between the two, and I think that would more satisfy the intent behind calling it usable open space.
Any thoughts?
I do have some thoughts on that. We will acquiesce to whatever the planning commission, what their preference is. I can tell you in the past, we've had some issues on sites like this where you have open space on both sides, and have had some complaints afterwards where they tend to get a lot of traffic, and, kids that play in one area tend to think that, it's okay to run back and forth over people's lots, and there's been some issues with that, and with adjacent properties. Our preference would be to leave it like it is. I mean, there is access to that open space from here. This area here is about 1 1/3, 1 1/4 acres. And, we're planning on clearing that area out, not taking all the trees down, but a park-like setting. And we really feel that that's going to be where any activity is going to take place.
Okay. Comments, thoughts, anyone?
I'm not sure, but I kind of agree with the applicant on this one, and connecting the two.
Do not connect them?
Not connecting the two. I think that it encourages, sort of.
Don't know how you're going to stop kids anyway.
Yeah, you're not going to stop kids.
If you know how to stop kids from doing stuff they're not supposed to do, I'm all ears.
I'm not going to say it stops them, but at least it doesn't encourage them.
And quite honestly, a site like this, don't expect a whole lot of use of the common elements. I lived in, at one point in time in Mill Point, and there's a lot of open spaces there. That was a lawsuit that got put that in there. No one uses it. Heck, Cobblestone has usable space, and I rarely see anyone using those soccer fields and stuff. Now, you go to Hartland Estates, it's a different story. People do use those open spaces, so it depends on what you put in those open spaces, and if nothing's proposed to be put in those open spaces, no one's going to use it.
Well, particularly if the triangular piece that is here, this is wooded, and this is wooded, but less likely. If it were a plowed field, maybe yes.
Right.
Bigger concern is people going in there and cutting trees down for firewood.
Yeah. Well, they can cut the ones up on the ground, right?
Yeah.
So where are you with that, Mike?
I guess I could be persuaded either way. I'm not opposed to leaving it as the applicant has it.
Okay.
So,
I don't have a problem either way either. Open space like that, probably just utilize the one, maybe make some trails for them or something for the community, but other than that, I don't know. You're not going to keep kids away from running through there no matter how you do it, and
no, I agree. I think if you pulled the property boundary back and provided a space, the kids are just going to make it a bigger space.
Yeah, and the other thing is who's going to maintain that area? If it's open space, nobody's going to want to take care of it, or the person that does is going to want it, and
so I'm comfortable with what the applicant.
So leave it as proposed?
Yes.
Okay. Page 4, Maxfield Road access. I guess the big note here is you're working with them on site distance along Maxfield, that being the County Road Commission. And everyone note 18 and 19, lots 18 and 19 are direct access off Maxfield, not part of the subdivision roadway.
why is that?
Well, I don't know how you'd connect them.
Oh, okay.
See it there? Yeah. Traffic generation, I would agree on not requiring the additional traffic study from the standpoint of 21 lots. Does everyone agree with that? The county doesn't require it. That seems a burden for 21 properties, single-family homes.
I agree.
Internal vehicular pedestrian circulation in Lone Tree, kind of talked about that, but Dave's looking for a comment. Is the discretion of the Planning Commission whether to require sidewalks along the property's road frontage and/or internal site.
I recognize we've talked about this. I would...
Well, it's here.
Yep.
Talk about it. I still have the opinion no sidewalks.
I agree. Particularly this parcel, how wooded and everything, the natural appearance of it, I don't think sidewalks would add any value to it.
And we're
These are
talking an
akin
open
to-
ditch road, too.
Right. And it's akin to, my assumption is what's around there, right? There's no sidewalks.
There's no sidewalk along Maxfield Road.
Right.
So, I mean,
Nor are there any long-range plans to do one.
so this is similar to like the Tipsico Lake area, or down by where you used to live.
Right. Okay, so no sidewalks.
I'm too many impervious surfaces. You don't need any more.
Exactly. Page 6, we're still in the access area. We're talking about the private road. Dave's got a comment here that if the Planning Commission determines that a second point of public access for the private road in excess of 600 feet is not reasonably feasible, that determination should be noted as part of the formal recommendation.
So the zoning ordinance does say that when you get to a private road in excess of 600 feet, which this cul-de-sac is, then we need to start looking toward a second point of access, whether it's a horseshoe design that goes back out onto Maxfield Road, or whether it's a easement to, perhaps in this area, for a future connection to this developable property here. The planning department understands the limitations to all those options, but it's also our job to bring it up and have the planning commission discuss it and concur with what I think the applicant's finding is that there's no reasonable, feasible way to provide for that second point of public access.
Well, and I think the big issue for them is the second point is fairly obvious where it would go. That's where they have their emergency access right now, and they're already having site distance issues with the Livingston County Road Commission on an emergency drive that hopefully is never used.
Yes. Yeah, that's true, they are. And I remember we talked about this with them early on, and that issue was certainly brought up, and it was brought up just how it would impact the other lots to have a second point of access, and then that second point of access would be on the unpaid portion of Maxfield, so that was something they had to take into account. I can certainly see the logic in not seeing a feasible alternative.
A lot more trees to come down, too.
Yeah. Everybody pretty much agree with that?
I would agree.
I agree.
Okay.
And for whatever, so you do have the fire marshal's review letter, and he concurs that that's acceptable so long as we have that emergency access that they are showing.
So it would appear as though we've got that resolved. So page 8, setbacks, don't really have any thing there other than this 25-foot natural features preservation area around most of the site's perimeter. Utilities. Question, is the electricity within the development going to be underground?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Guess we can talk about the natural features and Planning Commission approval of waivers from strict application of the landscape standards. I've made my comments known about it. It's a wooded site. It doesn't, I believe we agree, it doesn't make sense to tear things down to put things in.
I agree.
When they exist. And they have gone through and taken inventory of the 25-foot buffer around the property itself. We all know when those lots are sold, people are going to clear trees for their homes and their driveways. They're going to want a yard. But they can't control that. So how would we handle that, other than that's my opinion?
Well, I do know that, and maybe this is answered in the, like, when the cobblestone and Mill Point were put in, the perimeter trees that go around that site were considered a common element and prohibited the landowners from removal. And I'm not sure, do we have something proposed in this regard because what you do is you create this, I don't think they would get removed anyway. If someone's going to move in there, they're going to keep as many trees as they want.
One of the options, and I think we do speak to it in the letter, I'm struggling to find it, but we would recommend that a conservation easement be recorded with the master deed, and that way, in theory, everybody who buys a lot in there would understand that these trees that are within this conservation easement, which would be defined and would include that 25-foot perimeter, are not to be impacted, not to be cut down, not to be over trimmed.
You guys agree to that?
That is our intent, yes.
Okay. I agree totally. I mean, if we're going to get that out of it, then you're providing some natural buffer that exists between that and any neighboring development that is there or will come in the future, and can take out a lot of the other general landscaping requirements that we might have that would be the screening in that, because we're going to accept that as our buffer.
I will say that Sue Grissom did have some comments on this, and I think they're consistent with a lot of what I'm hearing. One of her suggestions, though, and I know I talked to Mr. LeClaire about this, is so February is a tough time to gauge the health of a tree. And Sue's thought was, could we take one more lap around that perimeter, not necessarily the same level of detail they already had to do, where we're actually GPSing every tree, but just a visual inspection to ensure that the trees are, the foliage is coming out, the trees are healthy, they are, that these trees that the Planning Commission is accepting as an alternative to new landscape plantings are healthy trees, and we're not going to find when we get into May that half of them are diseased or dead or anything like that.
How would that work in an approval process or a recommendation of approval for the site plan, though?
I think if one of the conditions of preliminary final condominium approval was if you wanted to put it on my department, I mean, that Mr. LeClaire would be willing to go out there with me and do a visual inspection and ensure that we're looking at some healthy trees along that perimeter.
I would be fine with that, but if they aren't, they're probably knee-deep into a program already that we're going to come in and require berming and extensively different site plan approval than we approved.
I don't disagree. I'm open to better ideas. It's still too early to know. I mean, I know I talked to Mr. LeClaire, and he's pretty confident that those trees are in good health, that if a tree's been dead or diseased or dying for more than a couple seasons, it's apparent even in the dead of winter. The limbs are falling down and drooping and things like that, and I trust that to be the case. I could see the logic, though, in taking one more look at it within the next month or two.
So if we take a look at it and it's not healthy, then what's the process of review and approval at that point?
Then I think it's not unreasonable for a landscape plan to be enhanced a little bit to fill in some of those areas where if there is a pocket of trees that aren't as healthy as we would like, to replace them with something that does meet the landscaping intent.
I'm still trying to figure out how you would write this motion.
Well, I'm concerned with it, one, but two, I'm trying to comprehend where we've gone for screening between developments and then proposed it, it's typically been on the common elements of the development. These are all private lots. So are we going to have them landscape the private lots? Is that what we would do?
I think the only way to address that is through the condominium documents that are filed and puts the onus on the property owner. I mean, for example, where I live, it's not a site condo, but my covenants that run with the site, we could only remove a certain number of trees for our house, where our house was located.
We have that, too.
And it was designed for that reason, to maintain the natural character. Now, it didn't, then it became incumbent upon our organization when someone came in and decided to harvest, a bunch of trees.
Well, just trying to be common sense, since disease, water, all the reasons that trees would be dead, that they're old does not know 25 feet from a property line that does not exist. The property itself probably has the whole problem, if it's within 25 feet, would be my guess. My guess is that if this is a 21-acre site of dead trees, there's more than 21 acres of dead trees over there that fall into the neighbors in every what direction. And it is nature. Trees die, and they fall, and they rot, and, you know, they go back into the earth, unless somebody comes and cuts them up and takes them for firewood. By taking a 21-acre site and put a 25-foot conservation easement around it, if you were to handle the clearing of the site as you speak, that's the way our development was done, where it actually was reviewed by the board or the builder in the beginning, and they were allowed to take out so many, they couldn't touch within, I think ours was 15 feet of the property line side and 35 in the back. That may be, it could be a possibility.
That would be the way I would go. I agree with that.
You have experience with this in other communities that you're
I guess,
developing in?
are you concerned about the landscape buffer perimeter? I'm having a little bit of a hard time with it. One, maybe because I've been out on the site several times this past fall, and it is a healthy woodlot.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's green and true, and, you know, I mean, unless something substantial happens over the winter that I certainly can't foresee, I'm not even, you know, I don't even think it's a big issue. But open to suggestions. I mean, I'd be happy to kind of do a run around with Dave in the spring. You know, we did tie all the trees out. We did not tag them. I can locate them on a GPS and kind of walk with it, but the problem is when the leaves come out, then you can't see the sky. That makes that a little bit difficult, but, you know, we could certainly do a lap around there, and I'm very confident that, you know, what he's going to see is a healthy, you know, a healthy perimeter buffer.
Well, I think what I'm saying is I think the same thing. I don't think there's a 21-acre patch of dead trees in the township.
Right.
Defined by your property line.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, right.
I think it's in the neighbors. If it's happening, it's all over there.
Sure.
And I haven't heard of no problems.
Right, right.
Now, I do know they have water there, and, you know, those can cause some problems in some of the wooded areas we had in our neighborhood. I just don't want to tie it up with complications.
Right.
If we're going to recommend approval, we should recommend approval. I'm concerned about coming back 3 months from now and saying, well, wait a minute now. Now you have to add a berm and trees all the way around it. Probably not the scope of work you were thinking you were getting into.
Right.
That's my concern with that.
I bring up a question of one of your fellow planning commission members.
Yep. I understand. Do you have any thoughts, Mike?
Yes, I do. My recommendation would not to put any restrictions on it. If we believe that it's a healthy site, nature does its course, it is what it is. Either that or we make a statement that you wipe out the whole 25-foot and replant it. And my recommendation is to leave the site alone. It's been that way for all the time I've ever been around this area, and it's a wonderful area. I mean, in the summertime you go through there, it's so nicely shaded, and it's beautiful in there. I can't believe that there are a number of unhealthy trees that I should be concerned with. So I'd say leave it alone. Don't try to tie it down.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with leaving it alone for sure. I believe there's a healthy site there, and if the homeowners association wants to put some type of restriction on leaving perimeter trees up, it's a good idea, but I don't think it should be handled through here.
Joe?
I agree. Got a consensus.
Okay. So we'll take your 25-foot conservation easement.
Yes.
But we do want to see that, we do want to see the easement. We do want to see a conservation easement.
25-foot conservation easement around the perimeter.
Around the perimeter as shown it?
As you've got I guess you're calling it three sides?
Three sides, yeah.
Right.
With the exception of where the detention pond is.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
clear.
Can we talk about the detention pond for a moment?
Absolutely. Any other landscaping? Because we're all in this section. I'm just catching up in your letter.
This is detention pond landscaping on behalf of Sue.
Okay.
The plantings proposed around the detention basin are not placed in a natural manner per the ordinance and should be reworked. Also, I'm not sure if we would require evergreen trees if there are none existing. So I think what she's saying is perhaps this is a fairly linear planting along this south end of the detention pond, and you're proposing, Mr. Eau Claire, white pines, a spruce tree, and her question was if there's no other trees of that species on that site, would those be contrary to our intent of maintaining a natural, Norway spruces, I guess. Would that be contrary to maintaining a natural setting?
Different view on that. I mean, where I live, the entire area was wooded, right? And when they went back and did the plantings, they were all, I mean, Tom and I live in the same neighborhood. They're all spruce, they're all coniferous trees. They're all plantings of that. I think it looks wonderful with the mixture of those coniferous trees with the deciduous trees that are there. You know, so I don't know. I don't have a real one thing or another. The other thing too is you want to sometimes identify where that detention area is located. Having it stand out somewhat with something a little bit different, so people understand that that's not a site plan where you're going to go build a house or something like that. It's not that anyone would do that, but I'm okay with it, but I defer to the rest. I'm the new guy on the block, so
Hey, that doesn't matter.
First of all, the intent of screening is to screen the detention pond, so if you didn't use evergreens, it's not going to be screened, so we're not really meeting the intent. And the other thing is the people that live there might appreciate some green during the winter when all the leaves fall off. So I'm okay with mixing.
I am too. I figured the same thing, is that come wintertime, it might look kind of nice to have some greenery. So
All right.
I'm all right with it.
And I'm all right with it, too. So you're good. Thank you. Dave, anything else on the landscape then from Sue or yourself?
I don't believe from Sue. Is what I'm hearing a general consensus that the landscaping they're proposing around the detention pond, in addition to all the existing vegetation that is to remain, what the Planning Commission is moving toward is a collective waiver of any other landscaping requirements given the existing vegetation on the site.
With the exception of the monument sign at the entrance,
Which that would be part of the sign review.
which is part of the sign review, which has its own little landscape
Yes.
requirements of some shrubbery around it and that. I would agree with your statement.
and the 25.
As long as we include the
25
easement.
Foot conservation.
25-foot conservation easement. Anything else on landscaping, Dave?
I do not believe so.
Okay. I'm on page 12 of 14 right now. Looks like you need one additional RU. Probably not an issue. No concerns from the engineer. Fire marshal has his comments in regards to the access and wanting to make sure it can hold the weight of a fire truck.
And,
I would assume there are
Now and forever.
standards. Now and forever.
yeah, and maintain the opening so a truck can fit through there.
Yeah. Now, what we do in neighborhood is they just mow that thing
Well, I think
times
he's
the
concerned
summer.
about the trees growing over it,
Yeah.
too, as vertically he's worried about.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions or comments for the applicant? Questions about the proposal? This is a recommendation to the board, remember?
It is, for a preliminary site condominium.
Yes. So, if there is not, you will find on page 13 a recommended motion from your planning staff. It's a long one.
Yeah. Plus, we want to add one, right?
It's going to the board, so it's got to sound good.
We can't just have Joe, carry the intent.
There he is.
I'll move to recommend the Hartland Township Board approve the preliminary site condominium plan for Woods Edge Site Plan Number 528, based on a determination by the Planning Commission of the following. The proposed open space, including the usable open space, satisfies the intent of Section 3.15.3 of the zoning ordinance, and 2, the length of the proposed private cul-de-sac is acceptable as proposed, despite being in excess of 600 feet, despite having only one point of access, and despite the lack of access easement for future private road connection to any adjacent developed parcels. And 3, an interior sidewalk along the proposed private road and sidewalk along the development's Maxfield Road frontage shall not be required. And 4, the landscaping proposed when combined with the existing vegetation to remain satisfies the intent of the applicable landscaping and screening requirements in Section 5.11 of the zoning ordinance, particularly those as they pertain to greenbelt frontage and perimeter screen buffering landscaping. This recommendation is conditional upon the following: the applicant addressing the outstanding items noted in the review letters of the Planning Department, Fire Marshal, DPW, and Township Engineer in the final condominium plan and/or in construction plans, and 2, the applicant submitting final site condominium plans, condominium master deed, and bylaws per standards of Section 6.3 of the zoning ordinance, and the applicant adding a 25-foot conservation easement around the perimeter to provide the natural buffer between adjacent parcels.
Yeah, that would be good on the 3 sides. I don't know how we'd identify that, but...
I mean, we've identified it on the plan already, so...
As identified on the site plan.
There we go. Perfect.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion to recommend approval for preliminary site plan condominium application number 528 from Commissioner Kalani, and a second from Commissioner Mitchell. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck at the next step.
A question, Dave. When we discussed this parcel at the previous meeting, there was a comment made from the public about drainage. Did we ever go out and look at how the property drained underneath the road? And
We want to do that. We were kind of waiting for the engineer and I were waiting for some of the snow to melt off and things like that, but it looks like Mother Nature is starting to cooperate.
Okay.
The engineer and the Drain Commission will be working closely on this one as well. So it's not just going to be a visual inspection by a non-drainage expert like myself. When the application does get to construction plans, that's going to be one of the main things that HRC is going to be looking at, and then when they turn their plans into the Drain Commission, they're going to be looking at it just as hard. So I have every confidence that whatever drainage issues there are there now will be improved because of the work that's going to be done on this site.
very good.
Okay. We are now to item 8C, site plan application number 529. This is the Podelnik shared driveway application at 3350 Cullen Road. Good evening. Welcome.
How are you doing?
Good. Could we get your name and address?
Mike Podelnik, 3350 Cullen Road, Howell, Michigan.
All right. Thank you very much. Dave, would you like to introduce the application?
What Mr. Podelnik is proposing is 3 shared driveways on the east side of Cullen Road, south of Crouch Road. Mr. Podelnik owns Mr. and Ms. Podelnik own the site that is highlighted in the aerial in front of you. 22 acres in this case, or just a
1.9.
just a touch under 22. So, Mr. Penelik's existing house is down here in this southeast corner. What Mr. Penelik would like to do is take this 21.9 acre parcel and split it into 7 buildable lots, obviously with one of those lots having the existing home on it. In order for him to do that, he had an option of either looking at a private road or a series of shared driveways. After a number of discussions with myself and with the road commission, with the township assessor about talking with his different options with the land division and with shared driveways and private roads, and he had some issues with the existing vegetation along Cullen Road and that vegetation creating some site distance challenges for him. There's an AT&T service pedestal that AT&T wasn't inclined to move, so he had to work around that. He's got a low-lying area around here that provides some challenges as far as locating his driveway. But after a series of conversations, the plan that he has in front of you is what he hopes will work. Per Section 5.23 of the zoning ordinance, the Planning Commission has the authority to review and approve site plans for shared driveways, and if the Planning Commission were inclined to approve it, then it would then move to our township engineer for a more detailed construction review. And then, assuming the driveways are approved by both the township and by the road commission and are built to standard, then he would be back to us with a land division for those 7 lots, which could be approved administratively once we know that the driveways are all set. So, Mr. Penelik did submit an application with the necessary information. That application was reviewed by the planning department, by the township engineer, and by the fire marshal. We did send the easement agreement documents to the township attorney. He hasn't had a chance to look through them yet, but those are fairly standard. Mr. Penelik is using the boilerplate language that we've used for other driveways, so we're assuming that part's going to work out okay. The role of the Planning Commission would be to review the location, the design, and the layout of the shared driveways. The Planning Department's review letter is in front of you, dated March 4th. So we've also included the review of the fire marshal and the township engineer, and the site distance evaluation of the Livingston County Road Commission. And we can go into more detail either now or after Mr. Penelik's had an opportunity to introduce himself and explain what he has in mind.
Well, what the whole idea was here was that I live in the house in the southeast corner of the parcel. It's a large house. It's just under 6,000 square feet. I had 4 children. 3 of them are graduated from college and gone, and 1's still at home, so it's time to downsize. So what I'd like to do is to split off the property that my house is in right now, and I want to build a house that would be a little bit further away and keep that country setting, and I have elected to build a house on parcel B if everything goes through as planned. But in order to do that, when I went to go split the property, I had 7 parcels that I could split out of the property. If I only split 2 parcels now, due to the logistics of the splitting process, I have a parcel that have to be split again, so I lose a split. So what I ended up doing was going to splitting to 7 parcels right now. Like I said, the idea is to sell the house that I live in now on a 3.3 acre parcel, which is parcel G, build a house on parcel B, and the other parcels would basically, I have no intention of selling them. I'd love to keep them vacant. I love the open land. I'd love to keep them open and just build a house where I'm at right now. And in order to do that, I did contact the Livingston County Road Commission. The existing driveway that I have for my house now, where it enters onto Cullen Road is just slightly north of the crest of a hill right there. So the site distance review in conjunction with the elevation change of the hill and the turning of Cullen Road further down, the Livingston County Road Commission wanted me to put a shared driveway for site distance review approval just a little bit more to the south, and that's why you can see that I've moved that over a bit. It'd be a 22-foot wide shared driveway that would go into the property, basically 50 feet. There'd be 10-foot radiuses out to the road. But the way how I foresee it is that it'd be a shared driveway going the first 50 feet, and then it would turn right off into the parcel F where eventually somebody would build, or, like I said, right now I'm planning on keeping it vacant, but that would be the option that would be open. If I then then to keep to get my next shared driveway, because of the crest of the hill that is currently at my driveway where it's located right now, I didn't have enough sight distance to put the driveway any further south, and with the advice of the Livingston County Road Commission, elected to locate the driveway for parcel D and parcel E where it's at right now. That again would be a 22-foot shared driveway that would extend 50 feet into the property and then split with an easement going back to the back parcel, the front parcel. I've got some elevation changes I have a topographical map that you can take a look at, but due to some elevation changes, there's some logistics where it would be better to put a house. The house is in the front, closest to Cullen Road would have to be fairly close, so I have drawn in just a sketch where I might put a house or somebody might build a house, but again, there's no immediate intentions. But I would have the 50-foot shared driveway going with an easement, then going back to the back parcel. Then we move further north, and we get to parcel B, and I've got another location that was approved by the Livingston County Road Commission for site distance review, and it's just kind of getting to be on the curve of the road there, so it helps with my distances, but my site distances for a shared driveway. And again, I'd bring it in 50 feet and split it off so that there's one residential driveway going to parcel B where I intend to build a house, and then there'd be a easement going to the back parcel C where if someone ever did build, could have a driveway accessing their property. Up on parcel A, it'd be just a single family residential non-shared driveway, and that one I don't think is any issues that I know about. But like I said, my intentions are originally now just to build a house on parcel B, keep the rest of the land vacant, and just keep my options open in the future for when I retire. And I'm here today to ask for your approval of the shared driveways, and so I can move on with the land division. There are some obstacles in the way if we can go back to the C parcels F and G. Due to that, where I'm going to put in the new shared driveway, if we go south of there, the embankment on Cullen Road is significantly higher than Cullen Road right there. It starts to drop off as it goes down around the corner. So I will have to remove several trees along that stretch and dig out part of the embankment. There's also the ATT pedestal that I will have to move, and I've talked to people about getting that done, but that'd be part of the process. Then for the driveway that's shared by parcel D and E, again, there'll have to be some trees that are removed, not as many. Some of them are mature oaks, hickories, some really nice trees. But in order to get the site distance review, we'll have to move those. And then when I get all the way up to the parcel B and C shared driveway, that one I only got a couple trees that I probably have to remove. But that's the situation. I hope I explained it to you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Any questions?
I have one, parcel B, like Biz and Boy. Looks like you chose to put your shared driveway right down the center of that.
On parcel
B.
B.
You want to build your...
Yeah, yes, but if you go further north of that driveway,
Yeah.
it starts to roll off into a lower area where the Hartland number 2 drain goes through. So it's really not buildable, as you can see on the topographical view, where it comes over across. The driveway to be just a little bit north of that on Cullen Road, and that area basically from there up to just before the corner is fairly low land.
It is very low there. Well, the reason I'm asking, I just concerned because it's not very marketable when you have 5 acres you're paying taxes on, but you can only use, your driveway is splitting it. So I didn't know if you were going to split it again in the future.
No.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't be a buildable site.
Up in this area, you're saying? On the northern half of
It's
B?
very low in that corner.
Yeah, right. As soon as you get north of that driveway for B and C, there's a line going across there. That's the
drain.
Hartland drain. and they're not the property line, but you got your laser pen?
Oh, yeah.
Need to take,
That's what's going on.
Here's the driveway right here, and it comes like this, but as you go basically across like this, or line like that, it starts to be pretty low swampy area, all the way up to about here. And this is the Hartland number 2 drain that goes through the property. There is a setback for any building that goes on here. I don't remember, it was anything like 25 feet on each side from the center line. I won't be encroaching that at all. But this area would never be able to be buildable. So really, even though this is a 5+ acre parcel, the only area that you can build on is right in here. And with that, most of this area here doesn't even perk well. That's why I've got this little bit of a cutout here. Is I got a perk right in these corners here that I can put for this parcel. And basically, this parcel here, the only place it perks is right in that little triangular area. And the rest of it, right in this area over here, is a real low area where there's sometimes standing water. So, even when you look at it for building a house, you think, well, it'd be nice to put a house right in the middle. But because of this very low area right here, the house is going to have to be located up near the front of the property, up over in here, stay out from any flooding issues. I did talk to the Livingston County Drain Commission, and he asked if a farmer from years ago had any type of drain tile that went out to here. And I do have somebody that has been planting corn and soybean and stuff on it. And I asked him if he's ever seen the drain tile. He said, no, he hasn't. And I haven't seen it either. But I talked to him, what I would like to do is when I build a house, so I probably will take and try to put a drain tile from here out to over there in case it does flood. And the drain commissioner's comments, I was kind of worried you might say, oh, you can't do that. But he said, oh, that's a great idea. So I was pretty surprised and happy about that.
You said B is where you're going to want to build?
Pardon me?
B is the lot that you're planning to build on?
Yeah, B's parcel goes like this. That's parcel B. And then the driveway comes in here, and the house would be probably right in there.
Your house?
Yeah, the new house that I would build.
Any other questions? Mike?
No.
Thoughts? Okay. I believe
I'll move to approve site plan application number 529 for 3 shared driveways on the property known as 3350 Cullen Road, Michael and Mary and Podelnik, with the following conditions. The applicant submit revised construction plans that address the issues raised by the township engineer and the fire marshal in their respective review letters, and the applicant revise the proposed shared driveway easement maintenance agreement consistent with forthcoming recommendations of the township attorney, and the revised easements and maintenance agreements be recorded with the Livingston County Register of Deeds upon the future recording of an approved land division application, and the applicant acquire the necessary permits from the Livingston County Road Commission and Livingston County Drain Commissioner.
we'll support that.
motion to approve site plan application number 529 for the Podelnik shared driveway from Commissioner Kalini, a second from Commissioner Voigt. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations, and thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yep, thanks. Thank you. All right, next up, item 8D, comprehensive plan update discussion. I would like to turn this one over to our planning director, Dave.
So at our last planning commission meeting in late February, we had some really good discussion about some potential changes to our future land use map. We looked at some specific areas. We looked at the southwest corner of Bergen and Old 23, for example. And, excuse me, we concluded that discussion by saying at this meeting we wanted to focus on the area on the north side of Dunham Road, east of the high school campus area, mostly owned by the Bullock family. this area here. This black Sharpie line was obviously hand-drawn, and this was meant to mimic that pink map that we saw around this time last year of areas that we would want to look at when we're looking to update our comprehensive plan. So if we were to say, speaking of those properties specifically, that's a grand total of 340 acres. These three are all 80 acres. That's 40 here and another 20 there, grand total of 340 acres. This was an area, not specifically those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties exactly necessarily, but an area that the Zimmerman-Volk housing analysis said would be a good area for the type of housing, the medium-density single-family housing that Hartland Township has a strong market for. And so my hope was that we could look at this area in particular this evening, given the hour that we're getting toward, and if we have any discussions on whether that's an area that is still appropriate at its existing designation as low suburban density residential, or whether that would have the possibility of having an increased density, given its proximity to things like the Hartland Village commercial area and the schools campus and the water main that currently runs along Hartland Road as far as the Hartland Fire Station. And a reminder that the hope is that we are to have a public input session, public workshop before the Planning Commission on April 16th. And at that meeting, the hope would be that we would have our proposed changes to the future land use plan, the future land use map, ready to present to the public.
Comments, thoughts?
I do have one.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that at the very least we ought to do medium density. I'd like to see that area, it kind of would support the revitalization of the village, I would hope. So you get people, they already have some nice parks up there, the schools are there, and very close to the village, and it may help revitalize that area. And I think that area would support it. It really wouldn't add a lot of traffic and a lot of other issues to the neighboring community. I think it's a nice place for it, really.
Joe, Mike, any comment?
All I'm trying to determine is what that current parcel, is that low suburban density or medium?
That's the low suburban density. I recognize that this is, let me pull up the...
Yeah, they're the same colors.
Well, it's because it's hand-drawn on, so we had to scan it, and every time you scan it, you lose
that's
some of that
right. That's
resolution.
why I couldn't...
So if you give me 1 second, I'll pull up a cleaner version of our land use map. Actually, let me go to this.
The only thing that I would have with the comment regarding maybe moving to medium suburban density residential is all around there you have state residential. Further down you have medium or low. I don't know. I just is medium. What are we lacking again on the study?
What we're lacking is the medium urban. So the medium urban.
So this isn't going to help us here on that marketing study.
No, the medium urban is what we need more of, and what the market study says we need more of, and what the map. So the medium urban is this orange with the black polka dots. And if you look around the map, everywhere that there is the orange with the black polka dots, that's already a fully developed residential area. So that is the one that we agreed upon months ago. That is a land use designation that Hartland Township would benefit to have more developable land designated as such.
And I think this one came up, we had talked about it briefly, is its close proximity to utilities. The utility extensions would be minimal. paved road with Clark and Hartland. Paved road additions would be minimal. Schools and the commercial strip of 59, plus you could come down Dunham and Clark to get to 59. I think that was probably why it came up, Joe. That was prior to your time here. There was no decision on it. It was just, if you're looking at it, part of the discussion was that. We needed it where would be a good place. It's off of 59, so it's kind of still got some rural quietness to it, even though it's going to have a little bit of density to it.
If it were to develop, and that if might be a ways away, but if it were to develop consistent with medium urban, it would be a significant, certainly a significant change from what it is now, which is a game preserve and a farm fields. But the logic... What's that?
A sand mining operation.
The logic behind it, from a planning standpoint, is its proximity to a lot of what Chair Fox just brought up. The school campus, the utilities that are available, the village area. So that would be why that area is one that we wanted to look at. And I don't mean to necessarily push this one direction or another. I just know that we want to keep this conversation going, and we wanted to look at this area this evening.
Well, and I was just repeating for benefit of the history of the topic and why it came up.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of looking at that. The only reason I ask about this little corner up here is from a perspective of what I'm going to call like spot zoning. All of a sudden I have this large parcel that I look at for the future as medium suburban, but I've left off a little corner that's low
You're talking that one,
density.
the one yellow.
Yes. So that's why I asked the question, what is that? And would we not want to include that little corner?
Right there?
Yeah. That's about my only concern. Other than that, I agree with the thought process that those other parcels are probably a great opportunity for future development.
That would be the property that I think you're referring to as being the little corner.
Is that the parcel with the bed and breakfast on it?
No, I don't think so.
The one that's been in the news over the years?
That's on the north side of...
Not that. The one that, oh, yes, it was.
It's on the north
It is
side
on the
of
north
Hartland
side.
Road, yeah.
No, a different one.
Oh, there is, oh, there's one right at the corner.
Uh-huh.
There's a road that cuts back in there with some houses.
But is that the parcel with the bankruptcy one? Yes.
It's not ringing any bells with me, but if it goes back a
That
few
is-
years, then...
I think that is it. It's going,
The one comment about that piece of parcel, it looks like the road ends there. Is it, there's some homes there, and then there's a road that
cul-de-sac.
ends? Yeah, cul-de-sac. So I would think that if someone wanted to develop that, they'd want to extend that road. And that would kind of be a conflict with those group of homes there.
kind of a downer, huh?
Yeah. Where, as opposed to if we changed it to medium, they'd be coming in off of Dunham Road. See what I'm saying, Mike? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Uh-huh.
So if we change that other piece that you're talking about to match the medium density, you kind of be allowing that property owner and that to add smaller lots to the end of that cul-de-sac where the people that are already living there.
Not if they didn't have access agreements for it. But maybe they probably do, because they would be landlocked without it right now.
Another perspective perhaps would be if there were something of a transition between the medium urban and the estate residential, which is a very pale yellow, then maybe that's a reason to keep some properties designated with the low suburban, kind of on the periphery.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and that's what, by what you highlighted with the Sharpie, you're doing that. These up here are being left alone. Hence, that was my only concern about, now you've kind of segregated this one parcel out here. He stands all by himself.
I'm not necessarily married to where the Sharpie line is, and I don't think you're suggesting. The Sharpie was just kind of, this is generally kind of sort of where we're thinking. It wasn't meant to be parcel specific necessarily.
From past experience, I have encountered difficulties when you isolate a parcel off by itself with different zoning. You have a tendency to have people come running in and say, I want to rezone this parcel. You've rezoned adjacent 80 acres to something that makes my property more valuable if you would have included me as well. But now you've isolated me and separated me from the rest, and there's been some court opinions when you do what I call spot zoning. You leave an isolated parcel all by itself.
Would you be more comfortable if we left the top 40-acre piece and that little piece together, and then just changed the...
To be honest with you, I'm comfortable either way. I'm just asking the question. I mean, what you were showing is fine. I'm just kind of concerned, what is that? And if it's already has some development on it, the chances of it being further developed in the future are probably quite rare. So maybe it's fine. It just caught my eye, as I said.
you got enough experience with the ZBA. I'm ready to listen.
So, as I say, I'm not real familiar with that.
This is pretty wet right there. In fact, we had it was a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the Township Board, and Matt Germain, who probably has Hartland Township seniority over all of us, said that, and it makes sense to me, the reason that Clark Road stops at Dunham Road is that this area in through here was too wet to ever try to build a road in, and probably the same would be said for trying to do any dense development. But it does have to be master planned one way or another.
It could be a great, beautiful piece of property for...
It could be the open space of a bigger development that's limited to over here, perhaps. So, if we were to say, 1, 2, 3, 240 acres of these 3 80-acre parcels, and then I think we could use the logic that we spoke of if these 3 were to go to something else, then you've still got something of a perimeter transition area from the more dense to the lower density and then out into the estate residential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And less chance of being accused of spot zoning.
Well, I don't... Yeah, okay.
We wouldn't...
I would be fine with it.
If anything, we'd be spot master planning, and I don't know if that's a thing.
No, that'd be fine.
That would be fine with me.
Yeah.
Joe, you all right with that? Keith?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Got your direction there, Dave?
I do. And the Bullock family will certainly be one of the people that we specifically invite to a public workshop on April 16th.
And Germain.
Yes. It's only fair to invite the people who are going to be directly affected.
Well, would this be something of a notification? I know we're not probably required on or are we required with the 300 feet kind of a thing, or?
Not, it's not a requirement because you're not rezoning it.
Just master planning it?
Yeah.
Yes, and so there are notification requirements for a master plan. But no, it's not a requirement that if it were a rezoning, everybody within 300 feet.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Is that what you wanted out of us for the comprehensive plan this evening?
is
I know you're talking about the April 16th date and all that stuff, and I'm all for it. I agreed to the calendar we put together. The only concerns I have right now is attendance is so sporadic and low on this commission that we're going to get to April 16th, and probably 3 of these people haven't even been involved in a meeting of what we've already just directed you to do. And it's a body of 7, not 4. And that's
Sue's
my
in Costa
concern.
Rica, so if you want to volunteer me to fly down to Costa Rica, see if I can find her.
Well-
I'd have to talk to the township board about funding such a trip, but I'm all for it. It might take me a couple weeks.
You have a board rep, talking over with him.
I'm only one of 7. You know, I support it all the way.
That is my only concern, Dave.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm very concerned about the lack of participation in some of this exercise right at the moment, for as big as this project is.
I can appreciate that. At least for tonight, can we keep our eyes on April 16th?
I'm fine with it. We just got to make sure we're bringing up, that everybody knows what we're doing.
So what else, is there anything else we could resolve that would help you?
I think this was a big step, was looking at this one. And I think at our next March meeting, which would be 2 weeks from tonight, there may be a few more conversations to be had, but hopefully that'll be the last one before this public workshop on the 16th.
It'd be nice if we got to the public workshop and the commissioners all knew what we had talked about in the previous meetings. And now we're not doing the meeting minutes as fast right at the moment.
We're working through a...
Believe it, a new secretary.
Maybe it would be, maybe somehow we could communicate the discussion of the last meeting with the comprehensive plan in Bergen Road and this parcel in some form of an email out to just, hey, bringing you up to speed kind of a thing. Because there are no meeting minutes, and those that are absent
Well, that's a good idea.
aren't
It's available on the internet.
No, nothing elaborate. We don't need a 3-page letter.
Just that, you know, just to summarize what happened last night at whatever date the planning commission.
Yep. Keeping you in the loop on the comprehensive plan progress.
And then maybe a little thing that says, you guys need to show up for your meetings.
It would be helpful.
I think I can artfully craft something that says it's very important that we all participate in these next few meetings.
I could tell you that I streamed it from Florida when I was there, and when that camera out there shines across, it views the whole table here, and there's only 4 of us. It doesn't look well. I felt bad about being in Florida that night. I'm glad I actually made arrangements to come home early, and that was one of the reasons why.
Well, I think if the board approves the budget for the planning commissioners to receive, you know, something like one of these things, you know, what can happen is the ability to call in, participate remotely. I mean, we're getting to a point where we almost can do that. And I think under the Open Meetings Act, you can participate. I think under the Planning Commission, I think you can participate, you just can't necessarily vote. Because you got to be present to vote. But I could be wrong on that.
If everybody had that,
I would
then
say
there'd be no quorum.
Voting in, I don't want to, because I don't know. I wouldn't want to say that.
But I mean, you only use it in a rare circumstance. But you know, at the end of the day, it's you know, I mean, that's why you're on the thing.
Well, and I think this is nobody's career, the planning commissioners. Dave, it's your career, but we're on the comprehensive plan. If it were just a site plan or some of the other things, I'd view it a little bit differently. I just make sure everybody's up to speed and they know what we're doing, so when we get to April 16th, they're not hearing it for the first time.
They could be embarrassed during the public hearing, and that's not good either.
No, I think it's important that they know, and if they have opinions and voices, I think they should speak up. It would be good to hear them. So, since anything else on this one?
Not on that one. I did have the comprehensive plan. I had one.
Oh, go ahead.
Just because I was kind of following the meetings, there was some discussion on an industrial area. And I'm just throwing this off the wall to think about. And I know we were trying to decide along Old 23 and then Clyde Road. How about something, I mean, a lot of times you like to see an industrial park away from everybody else. You have truck traffic, noise, odors sometimes. I'm just thinking maybe the southeast corner of the township. You already have a huge infrastructure with power there. You already got truck traffic traveling up and down Pleasant Valley Road.
Oh,
Just an idea.
I live over there. I'd vote against that.
I'm not on the page with that one.
But I will tell you this. It's absolutely, it'd probably be almost impossible, not only because a lot of those parcels over there are developed, have people, but it's wet.
Large.
It's wetter than you can imagine. And Tom will tell you,
Well,
he looks out at it.
They can dewater it.
Water's got to go somewhere. And it'll end up in places like Long Lake and those areas, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that there. Okay.
It's probably best we just keep...
Brainstorm.
Okay.
But I like the idea. You know what? I like that. I like the way your approach. But, along those same lines, there was years ago along 59 east of 23, closer to where the special planning area is, that some folks thought that really should have been an area considered for some sort of light industrial park, so that would encourage the infrastructure to be brought down that way.
Well, and I guess the point I was trying to make is that it sounded really out there, but let's get away from the 23 corridor and think about it outside the box a little, is where I was trying to get at.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, when we had those Pleasant Valley properties on the market, some of the tire kickers were light industrial, tech.
Hospitals.
Yep, that was one of them. One was a Toyota subsidiary. I forget what they did, molded something for Toyotas, but that was never anything that we were necessarily opposed to. It's just the final buyer, at least we hope the buyer, is a residential user.
Okay. Anything else on comprehensive plan? Are we all ready to hear Dave's planner's report?
Absolutely.
We are. What you got for us, Dave?
What should call to the public?
They've left.
I'm not sure that I have much for a planner's report. As you may have heard me mention, we have a vacant zoning inspector position right now, but hopefully not for long. I'm really pleased with the candidates that we got, some real high-quality candidates, and I have a tough choice to make, and that's a good problem to have. So my hope is that at the April 7th board meeting, myself and the township manager will be making a recommendation to the board for a candidate for that position. And so we'll have someone in place just in time for all the snow to melt and all the blight to be revealed again, or the limited amount of blight that we have from our good citizens here in Hartland Township. You may have be plugged into the township's efforts to work with the U.S. Postal Service on having one zip code for Hartland Township. I know our township manager is working on that initiative. I think most of you probably can appreciate what we're trying to accomplish there. And yeah, I think we're going to see the Chestnut Development. And the last thing I'll bring up is Chestnut Development Plan that went in front of the Township Board on March 3rd. Dave LeClaire, who was here earlier, represented another project. So he and I talked about that one and what that applicant has intended for a preliminary site plan development, preliminary site plan that he hopes we'll be seeing in May. So he's looking to move forward with that project. That's all I can think of off the top of my head for my planner's report.
Okay. Committee reports, comments, anybody? Motion to adjourn, please. So moved. Support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you and good night.